You already know what's going to happen. You've been here before. The rush, the energy, the feeling that this time is different. This time the goal is real. The plan is solid. The motivation is actually going to last. And then it doesn't. Not because you're weak, not because you didn't want it badly enough, but because excitement, that electric buzzing feeling you're calling fuel, is actually the thing burning you out before you even begin. There is a different way to move through life, a quieter way, a way that doesn't spike and crash, a way where you don't need a speech, a song, or a perfect morning to get started. What if the secret to actually finishing things, to actually becoming someone, was to stop treating your goals like special occasions and start treating them like the ordinary rhythm of your days? That's what this is about. Not motivation, not hype. Something older and far more reliable. Here's what most people do. They get an idea. Maybe it's a business, a new habit, a promise to themselves, and the moment that idea arrives, they feel it. This warm, rising feeling in the chest. Possibility, hope, energy. So they write it, they tell people, they buy the notebook, they make the plan. They stay up late imagining the version of themselves who succeeded, and for a few days, maybe a week, it works, because the excitement is carrying them. But excitement is like a fire built from dry leaves. It catches fast, burns bright, and dies just as quickly. The moment the leaves run out, you're left standing in the cold wondering what happened to that person who was so sure. This is the cycle. And most people live their entire lives inside it, excited, then disappointed, then excited again about something new, always starting, never arriving. The question is not how to keep the excitement alive. The question is what to do when it's gone. The mind that chases feelings is never free. Think about water for a moment. Not the water in a glass, still and contained. Think about a river. A real river moving through land that has been there for thousands of years. When that river runs fast, it is loud, it crashes over rocks, it sprays white into the air, it announces itself from far away. If you stand near it, you feel the energy coming off it. It seems alive in a way that takes your breath. But here is what that fast, noisy water cannot do. It cannot carve, it cannot move the deep stone at the bottom of the earth. It skims the surface, it rushes past, and it leaves very little behind. The land does not change much because of it. The path does not deepen. It just passes through. Now think about that same river when it runs slow and deep. No noise, no spray. From the outside, it almost looks like it is doing nothing. You could stand beside it and feel almost nothing coming off it. It is quiet. It is calm. It is in some ways easy to underestimate. But that slow, deep water is the one that shapes the earth over centuries. That is the water that carves canyons. That is the water that moves mountains, grain by grain, year by year, without ever announcing what it is doing. It does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need to feel exciting to be changing everything around it. Excitement is the fast, noisy water. And most people have been taught to believe that excitement is the fuel they need, that the buzzing feeling in the chest is what makes things happen, that if they can just hold on to that feeling long enough, they will finally follow through, finally finish something, finally become the person they keep imagining themselves to be. But excitement is surface energy. It moves fast and it burns clean, and then it is gone. And when it is gone, so is the momentum it was carrying. And you are left standing in the same place you started, a little more tired than before, wondering again what happened to all that energy that felt so real just a few days ago. The mind that needs to feel excited before it acts is a mind that has given its power away, not to another person, not to an enemy. It has given its power to a feeling. And feelings are not reliable leaders. They shift with the weather. They change when you did not sleep well, when someone said something unkind, when the day started wrong, when the work is harder than you expected. The moment the feeling changes, the action stops. And so the life stops too, again and again, every time the excitement fades and there is nothing underneath it to keep the movement going. This is a quiet kind of suffering that most people never name. They just feel it. They feel the gap between who they are and who they keep trying to become. They feel the weight of the unfinished things. They feel the tiredness that comes not from working too hard, but from starting over too many times. And they do not know what is causing it, because from the outside it looks like a motivation problem. It looks like laziness. It looks like weakness. But it is not weakness. It is dependency. The dependency on a feeling to decide whether or not to act. Real freedom, real inner strength, is something different from this. It is not the absence of feeling. You do not have to become someone who feels nothing, who is cold and mechanical, moving through life without warmth or joy. That is not what this is asking of you. What it is asking is simpler and also harder than that. It is asking you to stop letting your feelings make your decisions for you, to feel the resistance and move anyway, to feel nothing special and begin anyway, to feel tired and sit down and do the small part of the work that today requires, not because it is exciting, not because you are inspired, but because you decided, because you said this is the direction. And direction does not require a good mood to be honored. When you reach that place, when you can act without needing the feeling to push you, something changes in you that is very hard to put into words. It is not pride, it is not even confidence in the way most people use that word. It is closer to stillness, a settledness that does not get disturbed by the ordinary frustrations of the day, because your action is no longer attached to your emotional weather. The clouds can come, the storm can pass through, and underneath all of it, you keep moving. You stop being the fast, noisy water that rushes and crashes and disappears. You become the deep, slow river that quietly changes everything it touches. That is not a small shift. That is the shift that changes a life. What discipline actually looks like from the inside, most people carry a picture of discipline in their minds, and that picture is wrong. Not a little wrong, completely wrong. And because the picture is wrong, the feeling they expect from discipline is wrong too. And because the feeling never arrived the way they imagined it, they decide they're not disciplined people. That discipline is something other people have. People who are built differently. People who somehow enjoy the suffering that ordinary people cannot bear. This story is one of the most damaging things a person can believe about themselves. The picture most people carry looks something like this. A person waking up before sunrise, jaw tight, forcing themselves out of a warm bed into the cold dark, moving through their morning like a soldier. No pleasure in it, no ease, just will grinding against resistance every single day. That image has been celebrated so much in quotes, in videos, in the language of self-improvement that people ate. Have you started to believe this grinding feeling is what discipline actually is? That if it does not hurt, it does not count. That comfort means you have gone soft. That ease means you have stopped trying. But go and find someone who has truly mastered something. Not someone who is at the beginning of a habit, white-knuckling through each day. Find someone who has practiced the craft for 10, 15, 20 years. Watch them work. And you will notice something that surprises you. They are not fighting themselves. They are not grinding. They are not suffering through each session with clenched teeth. They are simply doing what they do. The painter picks up the brush. The writer sits at the table. The person who has trained their body for years laces their shoes and moves. There is no drama in it. There is no internal battle being waged. The action has become so familiar that the question of whether to do it barely arises anymore. It is just what happens at this time, in this place, on this kind of day. That is what deep discipline actually looks and feels like from the inside, not force. Familiarity. Think about something you do every day that requires no motivation at all. Brushing your teeth. Making your coffee. Taking the route you always take to the places you always go. You do not need to convince yourself to do these things. You do not need to feel inspired. You do not stand in front of the bathroom mirror each morning and negotiate with yourself about whether today is a good day for dental hygiene. You just do it automatically, without ceremony, without needing it to mean something in the moment. Discipline, at its deepest level, is the process of making your most important actions feel exactly like that, not dramatic, not heroic, just the ordinary texture of how your days move. And here is the part that most people miss. You do not build that familiarity through intensity. You do not get there by trying harder or wanting it more or waking up earlier or pushing through more suffering. You get there through repetition that is sustained long enough for the action to stop feeling like a choice. Through showing up so consistently that your body and mind stop treating the work as an interruption and start treating it as the ground itself, the thing everything else is built on top of. The master of any craft does not sit down every day feeling the fire of inspiration burning in their chest. Most days, they feel nothing particularly special at all. Maybe a little tired, maybe distracted, maybe unmotivated in the way that all humans are unmotivated sometimes and they sit down and do the work anyway. Not because they have conquered their feelings, not because they are superhuman, but because doing the work is no longer a decision they make each day. It is just what they are. It is just what happens. And that shift from discipline as force to discipline as identity is one of the most freeing things a person can experience. Because when your actions are no longer dependent on your daily emotional state, you become genuinely consistent for the first time. Not consistent when you feel good. Not consistent when life is easy and the mood is right. Consistent in the deep, quiet way that actually produces something real over time. There is another thing worth saying here. The grinding version of discipline, the one built on force and suffering, tends to collapse eventually because it requires a constant supply of willpower. And willpower is not an unlimited resource. It runs out. It depletes across a hard day, a hard week, a season of life where everything is demanding something from you. And when it runs out, the habit built on willpower falls apart. And then comes the guilt and the restarting and the cycle that so many people know too. Well, but discipline built on familiarity does not depend on willpower in the same way. It has become part of the structure of your day, the way sleep is part of your structure. You do not power through sleep on sheer will. It is just something that happens because your body knows it is time and the conditions are right and you have honored it consistently enough that it now takes care of itself. That is what you are building when you build real discipline. Not a wall you brace yourself against every morning. A riverbed, a channel that your energy naturally flows through because you have carved it slowly over time through the simple act of showing up one ordinary day after another. Discipline is not excitement that you maintain. It is excitement that has grown up, settled down, and stopped needing to announce itself. Why telling people your goals is often the fastest way to abandon them, there is a moment most people know well. You get an idea. Maybe it arrives quietly, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Maybe it comes suddenly, like something unlocking inside you. But it arrives, and it feels real, and it feels important. And the energy that comes with it is unlike most feelings you have in a day. It is alive, it is pointing somewhere, and almost immediately the impulse appears. The urge to tell someone. It feels natural. It feels like the right thing to do. You want to share the excitement. You want to put the intention into the world. You want someone else to know what you are about to become, what you are about to build, what is about to change. And so you say it out loud. To a friend, to a family member, to the small audience you have built somewhere online. You name the goal. You describe the plan. You speak the future as if it is already on its way. And for a short time after, you feel even better than you did before you said it. The goal feels more real now. It has been witnessed. It exists somewhere outside of just your own mind. The response you get, the encouragement, the interest, the small signs of approval adds another layer of warmth to what was already a warm feeling. What you do not notice, because it happens beneath the surface, is that something has quietly shifted. Your brain does not fully distinguish between doing a thing and telling people you are going to do it. Both actions produce a version of the same internal reward. When you say out loud that you are going to build something, a part of your mind files that in the same place where finished things go. The goal has been acknowledged, the identity has been confirmed. You said you are someone who does this kind of thing, and people responded as if it were already true, and some quiet part of you took that confirmation and relaxed. And relaxing is exactly the wrong thing to do at the beginning of something. The hunger that drives you through the hard early days of building anything, the discomfort of learning, the frustration of being a beginner, the long stretch between starting and seeing results. That hunger needs to stay sharp. It needs to remain unsatisfied. Because unsatisfied is what keeps you moving when the excitement has faded and the work has revealed how difficult it actually is. But when you speak the goal before you have done the work, you feed the hunger before it has earned a meal. You give yourself the feeling of progress without the progress itself. And a hunger that has been fed, even a little, is harder to keep sharp. Think back honestly over the things you have actually completed in your life. The things you actually built, actually finished, actually became. How many of those began with a loud announcement? How many of those were shared widely at the start, celebrated before anything real had been produced? And now think about the things you talked about the most, the plans you laid out in detail for people who listened and nodded, the goals you posted about, discussed at length, organized into beautiful systems that you shared before you had used them for a single day. Where are those things now? Most of them are somewhere in the quiet back of the mind, unfinished, unchosen, slowly gathering the dust of forgotten intentions. This pattern is not a character flaw. It is not a sign that you are weak or inconsistent or not serious enough. It is simply what happens when you spend the energy of an idea in the wrong direction. An idea has weight to it when it arrives. That weight is not permanent. It has to be converted quickly into action before it dissipates. And every time you talk about the action instead of taking it, you spend some of that weight. You trade the real thing for a smaller version of the feeling the real thing would give you. And the more you trade, the less is left to carry you forward. There is a reason that seeds are buried, not displayed. A seed placed on top of the ground, shown to everyone who passes, admired for what it might one day become. It dries out. The conditions it needs to grow are underground, in the dark, away from the attention. And so it is with most things you are trying to build inside yourself and in your life. The early stages need protection. They need quiet. They need the energy to stay inside, pressurized, pushing toward growth rather than leaking out into conversation. Silence in this context is not secrecy. It is not that you are hiding something or ashamed of what you want. It is that you understand something about where momentum lives. You understand that the goal does not become more real by being spoken. It becomes more real by being acted on. And every day you act on it without announcing it. You are building something that belongs entire, ilia to you, uncontaminated by other people's opinions, not dependent on other people's responses, not shaped by the need for anyone else's approval. The people who have built things that last, who have changed their own lives in ways that are real and not just visible, tend to share a particular quality. They are quieter than you expect, not because they have nothing to say, but because they learned at some point that the work speaks with a weight that words cannot match. Let your actions arrive before your announcements. Let the fruit appear before you describe the tree. Let the work be done, or well underway, before you say a single word about it. And in the silence of that building, you will find something unexpected, not just progress, a kind of dignity. The dignity of a person who is not performing their journey for an audience, who is not seeking permission or validation to continue, who is decided and is simply quietly doing. That silence is not empty. It is full of everything you are becoming. The ordinary day is where real life happens. One of the deepest mistakes a person can make is believing that life is made of big moments. We are trained to look for them, the breakthrough, the revelation, the morning everything changed. We watch films built around turning points. We read stories that skip the in-between. We tell our own histories as a series of peaks, as if the valleys were just travel time between the parts that mattered. But that is not how life actually works. That is not how a person is actually built. The big moments exist. Nobody is saying they don't. There will be days that crack something open in you. Days you carry for the rest of your life. Days that genuinely divided your story into before and after. Those days are real, but they are rare. They are exceptions. And here is the thing about exceptions. You cannot build a life on them. Why? How cannot build a self on them? You cannot plan to be shaped by what only comes once in a great while. What shapes you is Tuesday. The ordinary, unremarkable, forgettable Tuesday where nothing is new and nothing is exciting, and the world is asking nothing particular of you. The Tuesday where the alarm goes off and you feel exactly the same as you did yesterday, and there is no sign, no signal, no surge of motivation, telling you this is the day, everything changes. Just a Tuesday. Just another one. That Tuesday is where your character is built or quietly eroded. Not in the speeches you give yourself. Not in the dramatic moments when the stakes are obvious and the right choice is easy to see. In the small, invisible choices you make when no one is watching and there is no excitement pushing you forward, and the only reason to do the thing is that you decided you were someone who does the thing, that you decided you were someone who does the thing, that is the only reason available. And it either holds or it doesn't. Most people are waiting for the feeling. They are waiting for the day they wake up and it flows naturally, when discipline doesn't feel like effort and the right choices feel obvious. That day does come sometimes, but it comes because of all the Tuesdays before it, not instead of them. The feeling follows the action. It does not lead it. If you are waiting to feel ready before you begin, you are misunderstanding the order of operations. The honest truth is that the hours you will never remember are doing more work than the hours you will never forget. The quiet morning where you sat down and did what you said you would do that morning is not a story you will tell anyone. There is no drama in it. Nobody was watching, nothing was on the line. You just did it because it was the next thing to do. And then you did it again the next day and again. And slowly, invisibly, without ceremony, you became someone different. Not because of a single moment, because of the accumulation of all those forgettable ones. This is hard to hold on to because our minds are drawn to significance. We want to feel like what we are doing matters. We want meaning in the moment, not just in the outcome. And the ordinary day does not offer that. It offers very little. Honestly, it offers the chance to do the small thing, again, without applause. That is all it offers. But that is everything. Think about the person you most respect. Think about what they actually did to become who they are. Not the speech they gave at the peak, not the moment of recognition. What did they do on the Tuesday 3 years before that? They showed up. They did the work in the absence of evidence that it was working. They moved through the ordinary days without requiring the ordinary days to be extraordinary. That is the whole secret. There is no other one. What this means practically is that you have to stop asking the day to earn your effort. You have to stop waiting for the circumstances to be right. You have to stop requiring that your motivation be present before you act, as though motivation were a colleague who needs to approve the plan before you can move. Motivation is unreliable. Structure is what holds. The decision you made before the day started is what holds. And you return to that decision on Tuesday when nothing is exciting and nothing is calling to you, and the easiest thing in the world would be to simply let it slide. The life you want is not waiting for you at the peak of some future mountain. It is being assembled right now, in the quiet, in the unremarkable, in the hours you are tempted to waste because they don't feel like they count. They are the only hours there are, and they all count. Acting as if it's already done is not arrogance, it's alignment. There is a posture you can carry inside yourself that changes everything. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. From the outside, it looks almost like nothing, but it restructures the way you move through your days, the way you approach your work, the way you relate to the distance between where you are and where you are going. It is not pretending. It is not the hollow confidence of someone who has convinced themselves of something they don't actually believe. It is not positive thinking in the way that praise is usually meant, cheerful, effortful, slightly desperate. It is something quieter and more solid than any of that. The closest word for it is settledness. Think of someone who has already walked the path you are trying to walk, not someone celebrating at the finish line. That image is too loud, too charged with arrival. Think of them 2 years into it, well past the beginning and well before any external recognition. They are not anxious about whether they will make it. They are not buzzing with excitement every morning. They do not need to convince themselves of anything when they wake up. They are simply moving, steadily, without drama, because in their mind the direction is fixed and movement in that direction is simply what they do now. That settledness is not something they earn by succeeding. It came before the success. It was a choice they made about how to carry themselves while the work was still invisible and the results had not yet arrived. They decided to stop treating their goal as a fragile wish that might or might not come true and start treating it as a direction they had already committed to. Not with noise, not with declarations, just with the quiet internal fact of it. This is what people misunderstand about the idea of acting as if something is already done. They think it is about pretending you have things you don't have, performing a confidence you haven't earned, skipping the H, honest acknowledgement of where you actually are. And if that is what it means, then it is useless, worse than useless, because pretending is exhausting and everyone can sense it, including you. But that is not what it means. What it means is this. You stop relating to your goal as something you are desperately hoping for, and start relating to it as something you are simply moving toward, the way you move toward your kitchen in the morning, without ceremony, without drama, without stopping to ask yourself whether you really believe the kitchen is there. You just go, the direction is obvious, the movement is unremarkable. You arrive, that is the internal shift. When the goal stops being a wish and becomes a direction, something in your nervous system changes, the anxiety drops. Not because you are closer to success, the external circumstances have not changed at all, but because you are no longer standing at a distance from the goal, hoping to cross. You are already moving inside it. You are already the person who is doing this, not the person who hopes to one day do this, and that is not arrogance. Arrogance is the performance of confidence over the absence of it. This is different. This is alignment, your inner orientation matching the direction you have chosen without requiring the results to appear first as proof. The practical consequence of this shift is that the day-to-day work becomes different. When you are in hoping mode, every day is a small audition. You are testing whether you have what it takes, checking whether the progress is showing up fast enough, measuring your commitment against your doubt. That is exhausting. That is also counterproductive because doubt-fed attention grows larger. When you are in settled mode, none of that is happening. You are not auditioning. You are just working. The question of whether you will make it has been decided inter tid, nali, so it is no longer consuming energy. The energy goes to the work instead. People who simply don't need to be excited. They don't need a sign. They don't need the conditions to be perfect or the motivation to be present or the universe to send them confirmation. They just need to keep moving. The movement is its own answer. The consistency is its own proof. You can choose this now, not after you have earned it. Now, before the results, before the evidence. The settledness is available to you the moment you stop treating your goal as something you hope to have and start treating it as something you have already chosen. The choosing is the thing. Everything after that is just the walk. The trap of the perfect start. There is a thought pattern that steals more from people than laziness ever could. Laziness at least has the honesty to show itself plainly. You know when you are being lazy. You can name it, you can decide to resist it. But this other thing is more subtle. It disguises itself as wisdom. It poses as patience. It sounds, from the inside, almost like responsibility. It sounds like this: I'll start when I'm ready, when the time is right, when I have more information, when things settle down a little, when I feel like it. If you have ever said any version of that to yourself, you know how convincing it sounds. It does not feel like avoidance. It feels like you are being careful, like you are respecting the seriousness of what you want to do. You don't want to begin badly. You don't want to waste effort going in the wrong direction. You are simply waiting until the conditions are favorable, until you have done enough preparation, until you feel the internal signal that says, now. That sounds sensible. That sounds almost admirable. But look at what it actually is. It is the mind creating a condition that must be met before it will commit. And that condition, the feeling of readiness, the arrival of the right moment, is one that the mind itself controls, which means the mind can always find a reason why the condition has not yet been fully met. There is always a little more to learn. There is always a slightly better time just around the corner. The goalposts are made of feelings, and feelings shift. And so the start keeps getting deferred to a tomorrow that never quite solidifies into today. The cruel thing is that this pattern is self-reinforcing. The longer you wait to begin, the more significant the beginning feels, and the more pressure there is to get it right. And the harder it becomes to simply start. You accumulate preparation and attention without accumulating action, and the gap between where you are and where you are supposed to be beginning from grows wider. And the weight of that gap makes the start feel even more impossible. Waiting teaches you to wait. It does not teach you to begin. Here is what nobody says plainly enough. Readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is a decision, the feeling you are waiting for, that internal click of alignment, that sense of being fully prepared. That morning where you wake up and everything feels in order, that feeling is not what readiness is. Readiness is the moment you decide to stop treating the start as conditional. That is all it is. It is a decision you make, not a state you arrive at. The perfect moment is a myth, and it is not an innocent myth. It is a myth designed and maintained by the part of you that is afraid. Fear is clever in this way. It does not always show up, wearing its own pace. It would lose too quickly if it did. Instead, it shows up dressed as planning, as preparation, as the reasonable desire to do things properly. It hands you a checklist and tells you that when the list is complete, you may begin. And the list is never quite complete, because that is not actually what the list is for. The cost of this pattern is almost impossible to see in real time. On any given day, waiting one more day does not feel like a loss. The harm is invisible until the years have passed, and you look back and you see it all at once. The accumulated weight of all the time you spent getting ready to begin. All the plans that never became actions. All the ideas that stayed perfectly formed inside your head, because you never exposed them to the friction of reality, never let them be tested and changed and made actual. You protected them from failure by keeping them in the condition of not yet started, and in doing so you ensured they produced nothing at all. The beginning is never clean. This is the part that has to be accepted before anything else can happen. The beginning is always early, always imperfect, always before you feel fully prepared. That is what makes it a beginning and not a continuation. You will not know what you are doing. You will not have all the tools. You will make mistakes immediately that you could have avoided if you had just waited a little longer. And none of that matters as much as the fact that you will have begun. Because beginning is the only way through. There is no other way through. What happens after you begin, even badly, even uncertainly, even with half the preparation you thought you needed, is that reality starts teaching you. And reality is a better teacher than any amount of preparation, because preparation is theoretical and reality is specific. The thing you are actually doing will show you exactly what you need to learn in order to do it better. You could not have accessed that information from the outside. You had to enter the thing to find it. You begin before you are ready. That is the only real beginning there is, not the beginning that arrives after all conditions are met, because that beginning does not exist. The beginning that is available to you is the one you choose to make right now, in these exact conditions, with what you have, knowing what you know, which is not enough and never will be until you start. Everything else is rehearsal for a performance that never gets scheduled. The door does not open, and then you walk through. You walk through, and then the door opens. That is the order. That has always been the order. Here it is. The thing underneath all of this. Excitement is the signal that something is new. That's all it is. It is your mind's response to novelty. And novelty, by definition, does not last. So when the excitement fades, and it always fades, that is not a sign that something is wrong. That is not the universe telling you to stop. That is simply the moment when the decision becomes real. Before the excitement fades, anyone can begin. The beginning is easy. The beginning is fun. But the person who keeps going after the feeling is gone. Who shows up on the dull Wednesday with no music in their chest and nothing to prove and does the work anyway. That person is not running on excitement anymore. They are running on something far older, far quieter, and far more powerful. They are running on who they have decided to be. And that decision, once it is truly made, does not need a good mood to survive. It does not need a cause. It does not need to be exciting. It just needs to be honored. One ordinary day at a time, you came here feeling something. Maybe frustration at your own cycles. Maybe a quiet hope that there is a better way to move through life. There is. And it doesn't look the way you expected. It is not louder, not more intense, not more dramatic. It is actually much simpler. Stop waiting to feel excited. Stop treating your goals like events. Stop announcing and start moving. Stop gripping the outcome and start trusting the process. Let your work be ordinary. Let your days be unremarkable. Let the journey be quiet, because the river that moves without noise is the one that carves the deepest stone. You don't need fire in your chest to begin. You just need a direction and the willingness to keep walking long after the first day's warmth has gone. That is the practice. That is the path. And it starts exactly here in this moment, which is not exciting, and DD is not need to be. If this reached something real in you, watch the next video. It goes even deeper.